So you unpacked kind of a lot, but let's take a second outside of the Tarzan and Jane.
Just kidding. Let's start at the beach.
So from the beginning, what was the word? No. So you unpacked a lot, and obviously, for people listening who, depending on the size of the church they go to and those things, I think there's sometimes different, I don't want to say complications, but different things that come along with worship and resources and all those type of things. But for someone who's been on both sides of the deal, right? So, Daniel and I have both served on churches, in the thousands, and served on churches in the double digits. And so for you, I guess the question that I'm always trying to figure out, from conversations we've had, is like, I always wonder what the balance between too much craft and not enough worship, and too much on one or the other side. Because it's definitely possible to be way too in the trees and not enough focus on the actual ins and outs of your craft and those type of things. Because you've seen it bad both ways, right?
Yeah, it's been crazy. I've seen the extreme to both ways, where people just really spend a lot of time and they forget, about what they're supposed to be worried about. God wants us to focus on excellence and be about it. But I think the thing there, Trent, that really sets the tone is, it's like, who number one, who are you trying to please? Are you trying to set
Jane.
a platform? Yeah, Jane, exactly.
I'm trying to impress Jane.
Jane ain't got that. Jane doesn't have game like that.
Jane don't got game. That's the title of this podcast.
The title of the podcast. Jane ain't got game. No, but I think really it's what's eternal. I think that's the biggest thing, and I think the difference between really sitting, everything that you're doing now, whether it's the arts and and that kind of thing, it's who you targeted toward, who you trying to are you trying to win others? Are you trying to really are you trying to please others? Or are you trying to please God? Mm-hmm. Where's your heart at with it? And I think with practicing your craft and not knowing what the balance is. The Bible tells us to study to show ourselves approved, but it doesn't say study to wear yourself out, and that kind of thing. And I think what we do is when we do too much of that, is our priorities and the focus on the other areas of our lives. Like, you can sit there and gig with your guitar by yourself for hours, but if you're only spending 3 or 4 minutes in the Word and only praying for 4 minutes, it's like, that's pretty telling. So I think if your craft is overstepping your relationship with God and really overstepping what He's really looking for, and that's your heart. If you're more focused on your craft than your heart for God, I think you're going to miss it there. You're going to be disappointed.
No, I get what you're saying. So for, I guess the demographic of people listening most likely are 13-25. We might have a couple grandmas who listening. Ain't gonna forget about
Grandma.
Ain't gonna forget about you bringing the cookies to all the youth events. Anyway, but I take cookies.
Tortillas. No, I'm just playing.
We're in Tucson though. That's the thing here.
True.
Okay, so you were in LA. What was the biggest? Was there a big Hispanic deal in LA when you were there?
The biggest what?
Was there a big Hispanic culture when you were there?
Yeah, well, right now, yeah, it's.
But when you were living there,
when I was there, yeah, it was creeping up. It was pretty good. It was
like Tucson bad.
Well, no,
not bad. Like Tucson big
like here, yeah. You're talking like Nogales. Now I'm just playing.
No, I moved from.
It's a pretty big demographic, though.
I moved from a place where I've only ever met.
There's only like 3 people where you've come from, so
India. Yeah, for those who don't know,
you, your mom, and your grandparents.
My family's it. We're the governor, the mayor. We're
exactly.
We're the board.
Everybody knows everybody.
We're the entrepreneurs, the business owners. No, I come from. For people to know, I'm from Little Centerville. No, it's not called Little Centerville, but it should be Centerville, little town in Indiana.
Little compared to LA, it's all good.
Yeah, but now we both live in Tucson, obviously. So that's always a thing. Is like. My analogies don't work as well anymore because the things that are popular here aren't popular where I'm from. I could say corn. People want corn tortillas.
Corn tortillas, corn chips. Yeah, duh.
Do people call corn chips or?
They call them corn chips. Fritos.
No, they call them nacho chips.
I don't know about nacho chips. We call them tortilla chips in my house.
Tortilla chips. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, duh. Yeah. So I guess at 15, 16. It's hard to quantify the number, right? Like you should spend 2 hours in one and 2 hours in the other. And I agree, it comes back to the heart and comes back to the intentionality of why you're doing something. I think it's always interesting when you look at David, because he was probably the best example outside of Jesus, obviously, in the Bible of anytime he did something, his intention was always really clear, right? When he was a shepherd, when he went to war, anytime he always said some type of preface statement to us of my God's delivered me through this, through the lions and through the bears. Mm-hmm. What more can he not deliver me through? And then when he's worshiping, that you take the craft to make it an example to you or make it pleasing to you. I think he was always but he was in the fields doing that stuff for so many hours. Because I think that's one thing I always, with Christian music, and I'm not going to name any specific names, but when you look at chord charts for a worship song, and this because you play every week for the last 20 years,
57 years, yeah.
And then chord charts for any not top 40, but any pop songs out there. There's a large difference in the inability. I can play worship songs, people, and that's a bad tell.
Wow. Well, it's not a bad tell. Shoot, I give you props there.
Yeah, but what I mean is I don't have enough music experience to where I should be able to jump on and play that. The quality of the construction of music that's being produced in let's call it
Hollywood.
Yeah, it's just different, right?
Yeah, it is.
And the musicianship's different, right?
It is, yeah.
It's not a knock on any person.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because there's so much? Let me put it this way. Do you think it's because we've put such an emphasis on the spiritual side of things, which there has to be 100%.
Yeah, I agree. There has to be that.
That we just don't care as much about the core, the way it's structured, or.
I think really what it is, I think that unfortunately with a lot of Christian music, I think what's happened now is it's been jaded with what the pop culture and those kinds of things.
We follow their trends.
We're trying to follow their trends, and I think one of the big things is that, if God's intention was to create, 15 different Taylor Swifts, or
please don't do that,
or God. 5 more Ricky Martins. Oh wait, we don't need any.
No, we don't need another one.
But or 7 more Rolling Stones,
right?
Those kinds of things.
Right.
That's what he would have done. But I think that in the Christian music industry or in the music industry as a whole, everybody's really stepping over each other and just falling over each other, just try to make the money. And the truth is, in the matter, that is the money. God will bless anything you put your hands to, but the truth is if his heart's not behind what you're doing, it's first of all, number one, it's not eternal. Second to that, it's not life-giving. And a lot of, I think, of music in our culture today, it's not life-giving. It's overly reproduced, and I think that it's really doesn't give life. We talk a lot about our situations instead of in the Christian music sector, we don't talk a lot about who God is. And we forget about that. We get lost up in the mix of that whole thing. So, and especially in secular music, you hear a lot of these guys, and we see all these guys that are just we look at the last 5 years. We look at Whitney Houston, some of these great people that came out of the church. We look at Michael Jackson. We look at all these people that have gone
influence,
that had great influence and had roots in the church, just for the purpose of popularity and trying to be like somebody or wanting to be like somebody else, missed it, and so that's what that is.
That's crazy, because I feel like I will say this when I speak of that. I think the church has done. And when I say the church, people listening, I mean by and large the majority. When you're talking about perception or perspective, I'm looking at the large churches that I see. So from Cali all the way to New York, I'm just talking as a whole, not anybody specific. But I feel like the church has gotten better with managing creative stuff. Like if you look when I was a kid, and like, I mean, we were way like decades behind, like reading about you in history books during high school behind.
Are you saying reading about me in history books?
No.
Okay.
No, just reading about.
Okay.
No. Just reading about.
Feelings now.
No, just reading about.
Podcast is officially over.
Daniel slams the door and leaves.
And the door slams. Display.
No, but you know what I mean. Like we were decades, and I feel like we've closed the gap of technology and figuring out how to use some of those things to our advantage. I think there's still a big difference to go. Yeah. But even with worship and distribution's a big deal, right? Like you look at the Hillsongs, the Elevations, the people who have kind of figured out the creative side of those things. Yeah. I mean, it has gotten some better, right?
I think it's gotten some better. I think that it's kind of crazy though that in Christendom or in Christian music, if you look at it as a whole, I think that there's a big gap there as far as distributing and marketing, and I think it's really sad because then you have the secular markets coming in like Sony, like BMG, different ones coming in, because there's just a lack of people that of entrepreneurs and people that have a vision to just push it out there more, and resources. So you got these big guys coming in, and that's how a lot of these groups and a lot of these solo folks go into the industry, and they really they get chewed up and spit out, or they become a product of the secular music environment. Drugs, alcohol, sex, premature death, suicide, all these kind of awful things, and it becomes this awful machine, and that's not how God intended for it to be.
Yeah, because Hillsong's kind of signed with Capitol, I believe.
Yeah, Hillsong.
And so, because they get to a point to where they sign. Is Bethel's not signed?
No, Bethel's signed by the church. They have their own label.
That's kind of interesting, right?
Like King and Country, those guys.
The ones you hear on Caleb.
Yeah, those guys are looking at recently they're looking at signing with another label too, and a secular label, just for exposure purposes. A good friend of mine is the road manager for them, and it's just sad to see that has to happen just because they can't get the exposure. But again, it's all about, okay, are you looking for the exposure? Are you looking to see people's lives change? So, God uses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and he'll put you to the top. He'll put your name on the top of the list if you're about him and you're about what he's wanting to do. He'll put you to the top of the list, and man can't stop what God's wanting to do and is fixing to do. So,
because there's not much crossover. Although I think Hillsong, they've had songs that played on secular radio. Not a ton, but some of their bigger
crossover with some,
not
like
a
Big
ton.
Daddy Weave and different Newsboys, different secular artists have been able to make their way into the secular, Christian artists rather being able to make their way into the secular market. But it's not without a lot of expectations, a lot of things that are expected of those Christian labels and those Christian artists. There are lots of conditions.
And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the worship that I listen to, maybe it's just, but there's not a lot of radio songs, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Yeah.
You do have to kind of recognize that there's a certain type of song, you know what I mean? Yeah. Going to the chorus twice, one bridge, 4 verses, we're done type
remixes,
of deal.
Different things like that, radio versions, and a lot of your most popular, artists. I should say, I can't even talk right now.
It's the LA
artists. Yeah, exactly. A lot of Christian artists, friends of mine that I know personally, the Carrie Jobs, different people like that. They're doing a lot of radio versions in hopes to get it, out to
Elevation's newest one just
as well, they trying to get out there to the
which is good,
to the media, which is good, but
just trying to figure out the way to do that.
It's the way to do it, and it's the balance. Are you gonna be about what you're about? Are you gonna live your life out loud, or are you gonna collapse under the pressure, under the machine, and just sell out to what with these big labels and things like that? are asking for.